Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /Entitled People, where people truly believe that they can do what they want, when they want, because they're special. And in this episode, guys, holy, you're in for a treat. We've got an HOA Karen policing public roads. Opie tells an outrageous story of how her mother and husband destroy their family. And lastly, Opie's sister demands absurd amounts of money from her to save her dying husband, guys. It's gonna be a wild ride today, guys, so strap yourselves in. I hope you enjoy the stories, and as always, subscribe if you're not subscribed so you don't miss these crazy, crazy tales. I'm just throwing out this story because I know you folks will get a kick out of it. While I'm fortunate enough to not live in a neighborhood with an HOA, I'm a firefighter for a suburban district that's chock full of them. Big ones, small ones, old ones, brand new ones, HOAs effing everywhere. For the most part, they aren't a hassle. They gate off their private roads, but as long as they put a sensor on it or a padlock that uses our standard department key, that's not an issue. Enter the views. So the views are condos built in the late 70s, and as far as I can tell, the only view they have is of a freeway on-ramp and some eucalyptus trees. The views were built along a narrow road that starts and ends off on the main road, making one big loop about a quarter-mile long, with a couple of cul-de-sacs branching off. It's also important to note that the driveways for each end of the loop are about 30 feet apart, off the same road. The views have a lot of older residents, so we're there semi-frequently for medical aids or people smoking out their kitchens when they forget about the food they left on the stove, and even the occasional structure fire. Responding there is annoying because they built speed bumps every 25 feet along this loop. So once you're in the views, you're not going anywhere fast. It's annoying, but it's also a private road, so they can technically build as many speed bumps as they want. Enter the chain. About a third way along the loop from the first driveway, there is a chain across the road, padlocked to a steel pole on one side. It's a generic master brand lock to which we don't have a key to. And why is it there? What does it do? Why would anyone build something like that? The answer to all three of those questions is who the F knows? The chain has been in place as long as I've been working at this department, and no one can tell me exactly why it's still a thing. Phone calls to the HOA regarding the chain went unanswered and unreturned. So the problem with the chain is its location. If we're responding to an address that's closer to the first driveway but just past the chain, we would have to go the long way around to get there. The keyword is would. When the pandemic was really ramping up in early 2020, we were at the views a lot, sometimes 2 to 3 times a shift. Approaching from the main road, we would always take the first driveway because F the long way. Someone called 911, so we're gonna get there quickly. That's what we're paid to do. So when the address came up on the other side of the chain, it was unanimously decided that we would take the path of least resistance. Enter the bolt cutters. Every time we needed to get to an address past the chain, I would hop out of the engine, grab the bolt cutters, and snip a link. The chain goes down, engine and ambulance go through. Simple solution. After about a week of this and many mysteriously replaced chains, the enigma of the chain was finally revealed. One night, as I have a link firmly in the grasp of my bolt cutters, I hear a shrill shriek. Somebody saying, "Stop! Stop right now!" We then see a middle-aged woman come speed walking out of the condo next to the chain. She then says to us, "I'm the HOA president. That's there for a reason. What are you doing?" Now, I want to hear all about that reason, but we're here for a response and the clock's ticking. So with that, I go snap. Another link is broken. The chain falls slack and onward we go. We resolved that we'll stop by her unit after we clear the call, to let her know what a nuisance the chain is and something needs to be done about it. This course of action was ultimately unnecessary, as HOA President Karen took it upon herself to huff and puff after us as we drove away, and she came speed walking up again as we pulled up to the response address. I went inside with the ambulance crew, but I could hear her shrieking at my captain outside. We wrap up the call, get the patient loaded into the ambulance, and she's still going off on him. What it basically boiled down to was that she took it upon herself to install the chain, because she did not want people using the road as a thoroughfare. The reasoning behind this is an utter mystery to a rational mind, because it's a loop that begins and ends on the same road, 30 feet apart. No one's using the views as a thoroughfare. The chain got installed where it is because that's where her condo is. She just didn't want people driving past her home all the time. She then demands that we go the long way for addresses past the chain. We explain it hinders response time, and Karen does not accept this. It takes my captain asking her that if her unit was on fire and we're responding from the other direction down the main road, would she want us to take the extra minute going the long way, or just cut the chain to get to her unit faster? She acquiesces that she had not considered this, but she refuses to do anything about the chain. So war it is then. Every single opportunity we got, we cut that effing chain. Never maliciously though, only out of necessity, but it was necessary to the point where it was getting comical. It got to the point where a pile of snapped chain links just lay discarded in the gutter. She made numerous attempts at peace though, like what if we just notified her when we needed it unlocked? She said she would stop what she's doing immediately, or she would rush home from wherever she is to unlock the chain for us. And at that, I said, yeah, no. She then suggested, what if we cut a link on one end instead of down the middle? We tell her, sorry, the middle is faster. What if she gave us a key to the lock? Again, we say sorry. If it's not the department-issued lock, we're not gonna take time to dig through a key box. One day, as I hopped out to gleefully cut the chain as always, something was different. We saw zip ties. Perhaps she was tired of buying new chains, or perhaps the chain fund had dried up. Karen resorted to zip tying the chain back together where we cut it. She even attached a giant tag on the chain saying, "Fire Department, please cut zip tie only." So after consulting with my captain, we decided upon the most prudent course of action. I didn't have a pair of scissors on me, but I sure as hell had a pair of bolt cutters. So I went snap, dead center in one of the remaining lengths of chain. And so the chain got gradually shorter and shorter, and it became more zip tie than chain. Despite Karen running out of her condo when the engine pulled up to the chain, we were always faster with bolt cutters. The chain's been fully replaced a couple of more times, and the same cycle has ensued. Until one day last week when everything just changed. Enter the gate. As we respond to the views one day, we pulled up to the chain. I had my bolt cutters out and ready to go, only to be greeted with the most unexpected surprise. Where the chain had once stretched across the road, now looms a 2-arm swinging gate, and a beefy one too. They definitely accessed some HOA fees to pay for this beast. So on cue, out comes Karen. This time, she said nothing. She only crossed her arms in defiance, and she looked on with a smirk. I assessed the new obstacle for a second. It's too thick to ram through, plus that would damage the fire engine. It was made of tubular steel, mounted on concrete anchored posts, so no lifting the gate off the hinge. Karen then looks at us and she smugly says, "Well, looks like you'll be taking the long way from now on." Clearly having played out this exact scenario in her head countless times since having the gate installed. And she would have been right, except the arms of the gate were secured by a length of chain wrapped around and padlocked. I just looked straight at the HOA president, Karen, and I lined up the bolt cutters on the chain link and the padlock shackle. I then look at Karen right in the face, and I went snap. And I've never seen someone visibly deflate the way that Karen did at that moment. I then pushed the gate open, and the engine drove straight through. As I climb back into the engine, I hear her call out, "Well, at least have the damn decency to close it behind you." And I probably don't need to tell you that I left that gate wide open. The icing on the cake is when we sent the fire marshal to check it out. While the chain technically met the definition for impeding emergency vehicle access, we let it slide due to it being easily bypassed. The gate, however, was a massive violation of county codes. Despite being a private road, the number of residents along the loop in the views stipulated that any gate shall be automatically opening and have an emergency vehicle sensor. The gate fits neither of those criteria, so boom, 30-day notice to remove the fence, or face massive fines from the county for impeding emergency vehicle access. So in summary, we waged a year-long battle against one HOA president's desperate grasp to control a problem that never existed in the first place. And if that doesn't capture HOAs in a nutshell, I don't know what does. Guys, that is some freaking next level entitlement. And it always baffles me how people literally don't give a care in the world about emergency responders. Like, it's an emergency they're responding to, Karen, a life or death situation. And she never once thought, maybe I should just take the chain down, because those few seconds that they're spending to cut the chain down could be the difference between life or death. But no. The woman had the audacity to tell the firefighters to drive around the long way. Some people, I tell you. So I'm a 40-year-old female. My dad is 63 and my mom is 60, and they've been married 43 years. I have 6 siblings, 3 sisters who are 42, 38, and 34, and 2 twin brothers who are 20, and another brother who's 18, and this is relevant. I've been with my husband, who's 39, since we were 15. I got pregnant at 17 and moved in with my parents. I gave birth to my now 22-year-old daughter. We got married at 18 shortly after. My dad's father passed shortly after our wedding and left his ranch-style house to my father. My grandparents built a house next door to my parents when they retired, and my parents decided to let us live in this house and told us that this would be my inheritance. My husband and I had no issues with this. We then went on to have 3 children. We have a 20-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and I'm currently 7 months pregnant with my last child, a boy, due in April. Now, I thought I had a good marriage. We went on date nights, bought each other gifts, never fought, and we were intimate. My entire world, however, was shattered on New Year's Eve, when I returned early from a girls' trip I'd taken with some friends. I walked into my bedroom to find my mom in bed with my husband. My mother, the entitled bitch she is, then screams at me to get out of their bedroom, which really shook me up even more. Unfortunately, my oldest daughter was also home in her bedroom across the house. She was getting ready for a party. She ran out and she witnessed all but a bedsheet naked mother running out of our house next door to her house and slammed the door. My daughter was devastated and she went to my sister's house. I asked her not to say anything until I talked to my husband. I then asked him for the truth, and what I learned destroyed me. He told me that my mom seduced him when we were 18 and living in their house, and they'd been sleeping together unprotected at least once a month for longer than we were married. I ran the math and I was horrified, because the timeline meant that my twin brothers and my youngest brother could be my husbands. At that, I immediately called my dad and told him to come to my house without my mom. I made my husband confess, and my dad was devastated. He and my mom were high school sweethearts too. Needless to say, we could hear my mom screaming from her house when he confronted her, saying she never meant to do any of this and that she was so sorry. I then told my older sister, and she and I decided to have her throw a party for the whole extended family, and we invited my ex's family as well. At the party, I had my 22-year-old daughter take all the kids to the basement and put on a movie, leaving only the adult children and siblings. And that's when I told them exactly what my mom had been doing. Most of the family's on my side, except my 3 youngest siblings, my 38-year-old sister, and my ex's entire family. They all say I'm such an a-hole for dropping this publicly. Of course, word got out, and my mom's best friend, who's on the leadership at my mom's church, calls me to verify. My mom has since been let go as the children's pastor there, and she claims that I have ruined her reputation and life, and how dare I do this to her. My dad kicked her out, and she's now living with my 38-year-old sister. And lastly, my dad insisted on a DNA test for the 3 youngest boys before he'd consider anything to do with their marriage. The test came back, and my twin brothers, who are 20, are my husband's biological children. I've since kicked him out, and he's living with his parents. My husband's appalled and furious that I proved he's actually about to have 7 kids instead of 5, and that I'm going to be taking half his business from him. My husband started his own HVAC company a few years back, and for the first 5 years, I helped him get it set up. I ran the office completely and took time away from my teaching career to help him get established. In my state, all marital assets, including businesses, are split 50-50, and since the house was still in my father's name, my husband will get no money from the sale. Neither will my mother, since inherited assets are not subject to be split in divorces. My mother's also likely to not get any alimony, as our state is not a no-fault divorce state. I'm now over a month removed, and I'm still extremely bitter and angry at my mom, especially at her hypocrisy of calling me a whore for having a kid so young and shaming my family, when she's done much worse. I also despise my ex with everything within me now, as he was sleeping with both my mom and me, and in some instances coming to our bed minutes later. He got my mother pregnant less than a week after getting me pregnant, and I thought it was so cute and fun that I shared a pregnancy experience with my mom. Little did I know, she was carrying my children's half-siblings. My whole family is destroyed because of this. My twin brothers, one of my sisters, and my ex's entire family have gone no contact with me, and my children have essentially lost all of their grandparents but my dad, 2 uncles, and an aunt on my side, and my husband's 3 brothers due to this mess. My 14-year-old knows that we're getting divorced and why, and she's so angry at her dad, and I still struggle sending her to his house on the weekends. I feel that she's old enough to make a decision on that, but I don't want to damage her relationship with her dad. I've told all my kids that it's okay to love their dad, even if he hurt me, but the 2 oldest have cut him off 100%. I won't tell my youngest 2 until they're teens why we got divorced, and everyone else has agreed to not spill anything until they're old enough to understand. As for how I had no idea this affair was ongoing, my husband confirmed to me that they would meet up at my mom's office at church, in their cars, at a motel, and when we built the business, they started using his office as their love shack. Always when my father would go on business trips or I'd be out of town. It was pure happenstance that I came home early from a trip because I was uncomfortable from being nearly 7 months pregnant and wanted my own bed for me to find out. And what I'm still upset about is the thought of them still carrying on this full-blown affair if they never got caught. The fact that the grandmother and father of my children cared so little about destroying our families is what I can't get past. I knew my mom was always entitled in her own ways and a bit narcissistic, but what's hardest for me is that my own mom would do this to me, and that she would continue to do this for years, not caring that it would end up destroying the entire family. That's the kind of person she is. Holy moly, was that ever a roller coaster of a ride, guys, and I feel so bad for OP and her dad. And how OP kept her cool through all this is beyond me. This person says, good on you for not literally stabbing your husband. I would not be as strong. And OP replies, my pregnancy is the only reason I didn't end up in jail. But yeah, with that said, how anyone is mad at OP and going no contact with her over this is beyond me. Like, how is any of this her fault? Crappy people need to be exposed and ruined. And for people to not take OP's side really shows what kind of people they are. Like, did they need to know this? No, but don't act like OP's the bad guy when she was the one heavily wronged. I just hope she gets through this and she takes her husband to the cleaners and absolutely destroys that man, because 22 effing years they did this behind her back. I'm rooting for OP to go nuclear on that man. And her mom. So here's some context. My sister, who's 27, and I, 18, lost our dad a year ago. He was my only parent. My mom was never in mine or my sister's life. My dad left an inheritance for me and my sister, and she used her inheritance to get new cars and renovate her house. I live with my aunt right now because my brother-in-law didn't let me stay with my sister. I'm planning on using my inheritance money to pay for college tuition, as I've always wanted to be a doctor. My sister and I haven't been close. It started after she got married to her chronically ill husband, who was allowed to make backhanded comments about Dad and mock his illness, and make a scene at his funeral, only because he's ill and shouldn't be held accountable for his behavior. I've distanced myself, but my sister kept visiting a lot lately, venting about my brother-in-law's condition. He's been in and out of the hospital for heart problems, and he's in need for a surgery. She brought up my inheritance money several times, but I end up cutting the conversation. She then straight up said that I could help pay for her husband's surgery. I felt uneasy because if I gave her money from my inheritance, which is a large amount, I felt I was risking my future. I refused to help, and she had a meltdown at my aunt's house, calling me heartless, cruel, and having no empathy. My sister said that her husband's health should be priority, and I needed to help him because my education is nothing compared to someone's health. And then she asked if I'd be happy to see her as a widow and my nephew without a father. My aunt suggested that others pay, but most of them had cut my sister and her husband off. I argued that her husband's poor health is not my fault after she kept blaming and guilt-tripping me. She just kept crying, and although my aunt decided to stay out of it, she said I should be prepared for permanent damage in my relationship with my sister if I don't help her. My sister's been spamming me, sending me text messages and pictures of her family, telling me that this is what I was saying no to: a happy, healthy family with a happy, healthy husband and father. I cried. I felt like I was being selfish and not a good aunt and sister. I asked my friend, and she said to let them sell the cars and all the luxurious stuff they bought to afford the surgery, and warned me if I gave them money, I'll never get it back, and I won't be able to go to medical school. So am I the a-hole for not helping my sister? Yeah, so this is definitely a hard one for OP for sure, because on one hand, she does want to help out her sister, but on the other hand, it would totally take away from her future. In my opinion, OP would not be the a-hole if she didn't give her sister the money, because sister chose how to spend her inheritance, did not save for a rainy day, and just because OP saved her inheritance doesn't mean sister's entitled to any of it. And this person says, not the a-hole. Your sister chose to spend the money she got less than a year ago on expensive things, instead of planning for the future like you did. Easy come, easy go, as they say. Do not give them a penny of your money. They have options they don't want to take, and that's not on you. You are definitely not getting the money back if you lend it. You'll become a fine doctor someday, and I'm rooting for you. This person comments, and she did all that knowing her husband was chronically ill and would inevitably need medical care of some kind, which gets expensive quick. It should have been a no-brainer for the sister to stash her inheritance aside in anticipation of needing it for medical bills. Instead, she spent it selfishly, likely assuming she could bully OP into coughing up her share when sister finally needed it. One more comment, guys. This person says it the best, I think. They say, your sister is manipulating you. She received the same money that you did. If her husband is chronically ill, then they should have saved the money for his care instead of spending it on luxury items. She's probably always planned to spend her money and yours. Will refusing to give her the money damage your relationship with her? Probably. But do you really want to give up your future to preserve the relationship you have with her now? Because it sounds like a terrible one. And I don't think that giving her this money will improve the relationship at all. Guys, let me know what your thoughts are on this. So my family loves to overshare. This lack of filter sometimes has the tendency to get people in trouble because not all the information is provided, even when it's meant harmlessly. My parents are a bit older. They're in their late 60s. I was talking to my dad the other day on the phone because his birthday dinner was a few days later. I asked how mom was doing, and he goes on to tell me a story how my mom and aunt, the Karen in the story, were at the store and the cashier made a mistake. My aunt then went off on the cashier and she asked to see the manager to have them fired. My mom was mortified and she tried calming her down, but my aunt wasn't having it. I then mentioned to my dad, wow, that is such a Karen thing to do. He then goes on to say, yeah, your aunt does that a lot. I then tell him, that's the funny part. Karen's a real thing. It's when an entitled woman gets angry at the smallest mistake and she asks for a manager. My dad found this hilarious and I explain in more detail. I then send him a few links to sites explaining it online. My dad finds this so funny and he laughs that my aunt even has the Karen hairstyle. This then sends him down the Google Images rabbit hole, and in the next few days, he sends me random memes of Karens doing Karen stuff, adding, your aunt did this last week, or I think this one's about your aunt. And this leads up to his birthday dinner with the extended family. My dad's birthday dinner is going well. Everyone's having a good time, good food, drinks, etc. When suddenly, my aunt, sitting a few seats from me, leans forward and she loudly shouts down the table, hey Joe, what's this whole thing about making a meme about me? I respond, huh? She then tells me that my dad sends her all these pictures about things she's done. My dad did not give her the context that it's a generic meme from the internet and what it's about. Now my aunt thinks that I made all of these memes about her real-life events. At this point, my entire family thinks I created this meme on the internet about my aunt's antics in public. There's a back and forth discussion about it being really rude of me. She's pulling a Karen and she starts chewing me out. Meanwhile, I'm looking at my dad like, what the F, Dad? Back me up here. My dad finally steps in to say that this is a random internet thing that kids are laughing about these days, and that I did not make these up based on my aunt. Even after explaining, she's a bit irritated. It's apparent that she's embarrassed that she's so much like a Karen that she couldn't tell the difference between the stories online and her own encounters. So yeah, that's the story of how I effed up and almost ruined my dad's birthday. Oh man, poor OP's aunt, guys. And as much as we all love to talk about Karens and listen to the outrageous things they do, just know it's all for laughs. And I think the dad brought this to the table as a way to let the aunt know what everyone sees, in an attempt to stop her behavior. Like, I was gonna say that hopefully this leads to a moment of self-reflection and a change of behavior, but we all know that the aunt's probably fuming, and she's currently trying to find the internet's manager to get these silly memes removed. But that is so funny, right? Like, for her to realize that the memes weren't all about her, but that she's exactly like all of the other Karens, is freaking perfect. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's another outrageous episode. It's a pro-revenge episode, actually, where a lawyer decides to scam everybody and he gets ruined. It's such a wild story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.